I'm Olivia. I'm 29. I have long, wavy brown hair. My skin is porcelain smooth, and my green eyes are my greatest weapon. Most people find me attractive. Others say I'm dangerously attractive. My beauty always seemed like an advantage, but sometimes it can be a curse. Today, I'm going to tell you about the biggest mistake of my life. How one decision, one night, changed my whole life. I was happily married. At least that's what it looked like from the outside. My husband Daniel was a successful businessman. People admired him, and so did I once. But over time, something started to slip in our relationship. Work became more important to Daniel than me. Even when he came home in the evenings, his mind was always somewhere else. Even if he talked to me, I didn't feel like he was really listening. And I started to feel more and more alone. Then that night came. A weekend getaway in Las Vegas. I thought it would be an opportunity to have some fun, to relax, maybe find myself again. I went with my friends. Everything started as it should. But then, I met this guy, Adrian. He was just a stranger, at least for that moment. But little did I know, that man would change my life forever. Vegas, twinkling lights, resounding laughter, the smell of alcohol in the air, and adrenaline. It was a city where people from all corners of the world flocked to experience their wildest, bravest, most unforgettable nights. That night, I was one of them. I had come here at the insistence of my friends, but I felt empty inside. Daniel's neglect of me, the fact that my marriage was just a habit, I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted to be Olivia that night. I wore a red backless mini dress that fit my body perfectly, showing off all my curves perfectly. It was a city where people from all corners of the world flocked to experience their wildest, bravest, most unforgettable nights. That night, I was one of them. I had come here at the insistence of my friends, but I felt empty inside. Daniel's neglect of me, the fact that my marriage was just a habit, I didn't want to think about that. I just wanted to be Olivia that night. I wore a red backless mini dress that fit my body perfectly, showing off all my curves perfectly. I wore no underwear. I wanted to be Olivia with my whole being. My makeup was bolder than usual. My long, wavy brown hair fell over my shoulders, and my stiletto heels made my steps more confident. When we entered the bar, it was as if I had stepped onto a stage. There was dim lighting, crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, giving the place a luxurious but dark atmosphere. People were having fun, dancing. Some were just having a drink and enjoying the night. When I stepped inside, all eyes were on me. I was used to it, but one look, it was different from the others. In the corner of the bar, standing apart from the others, was a man. Tall, dark hair, dressed in a perfectly cut suit but without a tie. The first two buttons of his shirt open. He had a dangerous but attractive air. His eyes were locked directly on me. Cold, calculating, and eerily confident. I looked, but I didn't look away immediately because there was a part of me that didn't want to avoid that look. It was watching me, like a hunter staring at his prey, and I wasn't afraid to be the prey at that moment. When I sat at the bar, my friends were laughing and chatting. As the waiter poured the drink in front of me, I saw out of the corner of my eye that Adrian was still looking at me. In the crowd, I felt as if there was an invisible thread between us, and strangely, I didn't want to break it. When I finished my first drink, the waiter brought me another glass of wine. I frowned. I hadn't ordered. I heard that deep, smooth voice behind me. "You seem to want to discover yourself tonight. Would you like me to help you?" Goosebumps rose on my skin. His voice was close to my ear, but strong enough to make my skin tremble without touching it. I turned my head and looked into his eyes. His eyes had the darkest spot in the night. I didn't know who this man was, but I knew exactly what he wanted from me. He didn't ask my name. I didn't ask his. Because this wasn't an introduction. This was the beginning of a game. The drinks were flowing like water. The waiter didn't ask anything. The drinks came to our table by themselves. When Adrian spoke, his voice overrode everything. The music, the laughter of the people, even the waiter's walk. He drew me to him in a way I can't explain. He was not an ordinary man. He was someone who made every move consciously, and I was dissolving more and more in his hands. At one point, Adrian held out his hand to me at the bar. "Let's dance." It wasn't a question. It was a command. There was a voice inside me telling me to run away, but my body had already silenced it. When he took my hand, the warmth of his fingers penetrated me. When we moved with him to the dance floor, people were now just shadows. When he put his hands on my waist, my body caught fire. I raised my head and looked into his eyes. He leaned down and whispered in my ear, "You can still run away, but do you want to run?" I didn't answer, because I knew I didn't want to run away that night. As we danced, Adrian's scent made me dizzy. Every time he moved his hands over my body, the way he gripped my hips as we danced, it erased all rational thoughts from my mind. Then suddenly he lifted my chin with his thumb and gave me a deep look. "Shall we go?" he said. There was an impatience in his voice, an order. And at that moment, my heart started beating like crazy. I didn't answer because Adrian already knew my decision. He grabbed my hand tightly and led me through the crowd to the exit of the bar. We were on our way to the hotel, and I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. As the streets of Vegas receded behind us, Adrian's hand gripped my wrist tightly. He seemed to be dragging me along, but I had already decided to leave. I didn't know what hotel he was staying at. I didn't care where we were going. Tonight, I had completely abandoned my logic. When Adrian pulled me to the entrance of a luxury hotel, the expensive cars parked by valets, the laughter echoing inside, and the chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings, all of it faded before my eyes. I was focused only on Adrian. I held my head up high so I wouldn't think about it anymore and went inside. Even the sound of my heels echoing on the marble floor of the lobby didn't sound like my own. There was a part of me that unconsciously wanted to go back, but Adrian's touch drowned out that thought. When we got into the elevator, neither of us spoke. Only his eyes were on me, and I wasn't avoiding them. There were only a few inches between us. I could feel the warmth of his skin. Just as we reached the floor, Adrian leaned down and whispered right next to my ears. "Are you scared?" Everything inside me was telling me to say yes, but I looked into his eyes and whispered, as if challenging him, "No." Was I really not afraid? I wasn't sure, but in that moment, fear was replaced by desire. When he opened the door, a large and luxurious suite greeted me. The city lights filtered in through the large windows, but there was only dim lighting inside the room. I took a few steps. The room was eerily isolated. Adrian came in behind me. Even the sound of him locking the door echoed in the room. He opened his shirt wide, took his watch off his wrist, and carefully placed it on the table. He kept his eyes on me the whole time, but I couldn't move. The heels of my shoes were embedded in the carpet, but I was fixed in place. He slowly approached me, and for the first time we were this close. "Won't you come in?" he whispered. I should have backed away, but I didn't. I took steps. I was unconscious now. Adrian tilted his head slightly to the side, and a dangerous curve formed on his lips as he looked at me. "You know, Olivia, it's easy to read your mind right now." I looked at him challengingly with my eyes. "And it's not hard to read your mind, Adrian." He smiled. He took another step. Our chests were almost touching. His hand slowly slid to my neck. Sparks exploded inside me when his fingers touched my skin. And when Adrian leaned down and bit my lip lightly, all the screaming inside me was silenced. I wanted him. I wanted to feel his touch on my skin and fill my body with only his self. And that night, I surrendered everything to Adrian. The pleasure he gave me was unbelievable. He knew every detail of me, almost flawlessly flying me from pleasure to pleasure. We were crazy in every corner of the hotel room. As I got lost in the night, I realized that Adrian had taken over not only my body, but also my mind. The hours with him were moments when I forgot even my own limits. But it wasn't just a night of passion. It was the beginning of something much bigger. When Adrian touched me, talked to me, looked into my eyes, he did everything consciously. I could just be lost in the moment. But he was watching me, and before I knew it, the game had already started. When I opened my eyes, the room was still dim. The curtains were tightly closed. I didn't know what time it was, but I felt the weight of the body next to mine. My skin still bore the traces of his touch. But now desire had given way to fear. What had I done? When I slowly turned my head, Adrian was already awake. He was leaning against the bed sipping his coffee, and he had that cynical, cold-blooded smile on his face. Adrian's voice echoed around the room. "Good morning, Olivia." At that moment, my heart skipped a beat. For seconds, my eyes focused on him. He must have noticed the fear in my eyes, the panic rising in me because he had that familiar wry smile on his face. I slowly lifted my head from the pillow, the curtains still tightly closed. I didn't know what time it was, but the heaviness I felt in my body still carried the traces of the night. What had I done? I still had traces of his touch on my skin. But worst of all, Adrian was watching me. I couldn't speak for a few seconds. All I wanted to do at that moment was to pack quickly and get out of here. Slowly, I tried to pull the covers off me and sit up, but Adrian's voice stopped me. "You look like you're in a hurry." My whole body tensed. His voice was calm, the calm of someone who knows too much. I swallowed. "I have to go." My voice sounded weaker than I thought. Adrian took a sip of his coffee. His gaze was on me. "Okay, Olivia, if you want to go, go." For a moment, I felt a strange sense of relief. But then Adrian put his coffee on the nightstand and continued calmly, his eyes on me. "But first, you have to check your phone." Something inside me tightened with a freezing fear. Reflexively, I reached over the edge of the bed and picked up my phone. I swiped my finger to unlock the screen. Wrong password. For a moment, I thought I had pressed it wrong, so I tried again. Wrong. One more time. Wrong. My eyes widened. How did he do that? Boiling water poured over my head. That's when I realized Adrian was smiling, watching me. "Your phone can't be broken, can it?" I stared blankly at the screen, and an indescribable fear rose in me. Adrian casually stood up and took his own phone out of his pocket. And then he showed me that video. He showed us the moments of pleasure we experienced. Everything was recorded. My whole body froze. I lifted my eyes from the screen and looked at Adrian. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Adrian calmly turned his phone around, played the video once more, and smiled at me. "I'm just keeping our good memories, Olivia." It felt like a knife in my stomach. The fear rising inside me had reached an intolerable level. My whole body was shaking. "Erase this," I said, my eyes wide, my breathing ragged. Adrian tilted his head slightly to the side. "Oh, Olivia, really? Why would you want to destroy a memory like that?" I glanced toward the door of the room for a moment. I could have run, but then Adrian spoke. "You're thinking, aren't you? You're figuring out how to escape right now." My whole body froze. Adrian laughed lightly. "But you're miscalculating." He reached into his pocket and pulled out my phone. My phone. "If you're looking for this, I have it." I was like I'd been shot in the head. "Adrian, you can't do this to me." Adrian squinted his eyes. He was watching me. "Really? Because I already did it." My throat was dry. As he spoke, I quickly ran my eyes around the room. How could I get my phone? How could I get to the door? But Adrian had already seen all the options. "Olivia." His voice was soft, but there was absolute authority in it. My whole body started to tremble. "Sit down," I gasped. As if he had hypnotized me, I found myself sitting back on the bed. Adrian approached. He got down on his knees, his face close to mine. "Now listen to me carefully. This video can remain a secret, but only if you give me what I want." I shook my head from side to side. "What do you want?" Adrian smiled slightly. He put his hand on my chin. He watched me, and a wild spark lit in his eyes. I shook my head from side to side. "What do you want?" Adrian smiled slightly. He put his hand on my chin. He watched me, and a wild spark lit in his eyes. "I think you already know, Olivia." The moment I saw that cold, calculating look in Adrian's eyes, I felt completely empty inside. Why was he doing this? Why was he targeting me? Adrian rested his fingers on his chin and smiled slightly, watching the fear on my face. He knew he was intimidating me. "What do you want?" I said, my voice shaking. Slowly, he got up from his seat and walked towards me. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated. "Oh, Olivia." "You finally asked the real question." I swallowed. He squeezed me to the edge of the bed. I couldn't escape. He put his hand gently on my shoulder, leaned close to my face, and whispered in that icy voice, "You've started a game with me, Olivia, but you don't make the rules." My back was against the wall, my breath caught. Adrian continued, "How much do you think you know about your husband?" I froze for a moment. "What does Daniel have to do with this?" I whispered. Adrian laughed lightly. "He has a lot more to do with it than you think." His lips moved closer, almost touching my neck. But this time, there was no passion, just a show of power. "Daniel is my enemy, Olivia." My whole body tensed. Adrian tilted his head slightly to the side. "And you were in the wrong place at the wrong time that night. But I have to admit, you took me by surprise." "Are you using me?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. There was a shred of amusement in them. "Olivia, you're Daniel's greatest weakness. Why would I waste that?" My knees began to shake. "Are you going to tell him I betrayed him?" Adrian shook his head from side to side. "No. If I do that, the game will end immediately. I want something more fun." He put his hand on my chin, lifting my face up slightly. "I want you on my side, Olivia." I tried to pull back in shock, but Adrian grabbed my wrist. "Let go of me," I whispered, my voice shaky but angry. Adrian's smile widened. "Don't ask me if you can let me go, Olivia, because you know I won't anymore." I squeezed my eyes shut. How was I going to get out of here? Adrian slowly pulled my phone out of his pocket and turned the screen back on. "Remember, Olivia, this video can stay a secret, if you cooperate with me." My whole body felt like it was petrified. "What if I don't agree?" Adrian winked. "Then I'll tell Daniel everything and you'll lose him for good." I closed my eyes. I was trapped, and there was no escape. When I returned from Vegas, it was like stepping into a different world. When my husband Daniel came to meet me at the airport, something inside me shattered as I looked at him. His eyes were still the same. His smile, his touch, everything was the same. But me? I wasn't the same Olivia anymore. I had betrayed her. And I hadn't just betrayed her. I had fallen into the trap of the wrong man. Adrian's breath was still on my neck. I didn't see him here in this city, but I felt his presence. When we got home, Daniel put his arms around my waist and pulled me to him. "I missed you so much," he whispered in my ear. I winced. I felt like I had no right to even touch her. Daniel lifted his head, searching my eyes. "Are you okay?" My throat was dry. No, I wasn't okay. But I shook my head and said, "I'm just tired." Daniel kissed me lightly on the lips. "I have a surprise for you," he said. "I invited my new business partner to dinner. I want you to meet him." It felt like a knife in my stomach. I gasped for breath. "Who?" I asked, my voice shaking. Daniel smiled. Adrian Harper." My whole world stopped. I closed my eyes tightly. This must be a nightmare. But it wasn't. That man in Vegas was my husband's business partner. This was Adrian's plan. He didn't find me there without recognizing me. He set me up on purpose. Now working directly with Daniel, he wanted complete control over me. How would I make eye contact with him at the dinner table? How far would he push me? As all these thoughts burned in my brain, Daniel grabbed my hand. "Are you okay?" Inside, I wanted to scream. "Yes," I said. But my voice was barely a whisper. I knew it. This was going to be a battle, and I couldn't afford to lose. When Daniel went to work, I waited all day for a message from Adrian, but he didn't show up. It was like he started psychological warfare. He was cornering me step by step. But I couldn't wait for him, so I was going to wage war. First, I had to somehow get hold of the video of Adrian blackmailing me. I had to find something. I had to find out something about him. Everything about him. I turned on my computer and started doing research on Adrian Harper. The less information there was about him, the scarier he was. He was like a shadow. He had no social media accounts under his own name. But when I dug into old news archives, I found some information linking his name to another company, Harper Industries, and an old news story about an accident. Harper Industries founder Robert Harper went bankrupt 5 years ago in a case of corporate sabotage. Daniel Carter's company is allegedly behind the incident. I'm freezing. Adrian's father had been driven into bankruptcy by my husband. It made sense that Adrian would want revenge. But why had he chosen me? As I stared at the computer screen, I knew what I had to do. I had to find a way to erase the video Adrian had. I couldn't let him hurt Daniel. I wasn't going to give in to Adrian. But there was a problem. Adrian was a much stronger and smarter man than I had ever imagined. He wasn't going to be easy to beat. I could never let Adrian back me into a corner. He wanted to use me as a pawn, but he didn't know who would run the game. Running away was no longer an option. I had to beat him. If I failed, Daniel would find out everything, and my life would be ruined forever. I would do whatever it took to prevent that. After dinner with Daniel, I got a text from Adrian. You're coming to see me tonight at 10 o'clock. If not, I'll tell Daniel everything tomorrow. As I looked at the screen, my hand was shaking. This couldn't go on like this. Adrian would never let me go. If I went to him and surrendered, it would be his victory. But if I refused, Daniel would find out everything. For the first time, I really thought I'd lost. But then, I realized something. Adrian was challenging me because he was still sure he was going to win, and I had to change the game. If Adrian was so confident in me, I could use his confidence to my advantage. He thought he was setting me up, but this time I was going to set a trap for him. That night, I went to him like I was supposed to. But this time, I was different. The weak, frightened Olivia was gone. When she opened the door, she looked into my eyes. I knew you'd come. Of course I came, I said, trying to keep my voice normal. Adrian smiled slightly and pulled me inside, but I had already made my last move on him. I approached him, looked him in the eyes. So, what do you want, Adrian? I said, not narrowing my eyes. The smile on Adrian's face grew even bigger. You know that, Olivia. Slowly, he leaned into my face, but this time I didn't resist him. He put his fingers on my chin, moving closer to my face. But that's when he heard the door open. Adrian quickly turned around. Daniel was standing in the doorway. How did you find me? Adrian growled. Daniel's eyes were glowing with anger. I savored my victory looking at Adrian. I told you something, Adrian, I said softly. You never know who will win this game. Adrian's expression changed. For the first time, he seemed to lose control. Daniel was silent, but the anger in his eyes was clear. Adrian took a step towards the door, then turned to me. You think you got me? He whispered. At that moment, something inside me tightened again. Adrian leaned toward me and whispered in a voice only I could hear. Olivia, this is not over. And in that moment, I didn't know if it was really over. Do you think Olivia really won, or will Adrian come back? Was what Olivia did the right thing? Do you think she should have told Daniel the truth? What do you think Adrian's last words mean? Is it really over? If you were Olivia, what kind of trap would you have set for Adrian? Should there be more to this story? What else do you think could happen between Olivia and Adrian? Did this story draw you in? If you want more of such stunning stories of betrayal, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications to be instantly notified of new videos. I'm waiting for your thoughts on the story in the comments. Do you think Olivia is really free, or will Adrian come back? See you in the next stunning story.